Hey, good morning everyone, it's TractorMan44 here. There's never an end to things to work on, you know what I mean? We got a riding lawnmower, it's a TroyBilt. My son come up with it as a non-runner, and there wasn't much wrong with it, He went ahead and fixed it and gave it to my daughter, and then she's had it down there at her place for 3 years with no problems at all. Well, now it won't start. So I went down last night, didn't have enough tools with me to go all the way through it, but I think I know what the problem's going to be. I just got to verify that and then go ahead about the business of fixing it. So we're going to go ahead and unload that thing off the trailer and bring it in here and see what we can do. Take a look at my fancy stand here. This is a series of 3 commercial refrigeration unit racks. Those would be what if you were a mechanic, air conditioning mechanic, or refrigeration mechanic, you would see in grocery stores behind the scenes. Each one of these would have maybe up to 3, 4, maybe a 5 horsepower even compressor, condenser fan, and the controls to get it to operate on the cooler that it was responsible for maintaining. Could have been a cooler or a freezer, either one, doesn't matter. But we'd do change outs and everything over the years. These things were just the perfect height to weld together and make us a motorcycle stand for whenever my son was younger and we were getting big time into motorcycles, dirt bikes and four-wheelers and everything. So I made this years ago, I guess 25, 30 years ago, and every now and then I drag it up out of the woods whenever we have something to work on that'll benefit from it. We're going to unload that off the trailer and put it on here and see what we can do. On a side note, this little trailer here is one I built off of just scrap material off the job site. Most everything for it except for the axle and the fenders, just trash, discarded material, going straight into the trash hopper. A lot of these guys make it real easy to pull the hood off so you can get a little more daylight in here. Make sure you get your wires disconnected for the headlights, and then like this guy here just rocks backwards a little bit and lifts right out of a set of slots, just as easy as can be. I go string up the air compressor and blow a bunch of this debris and stuff off of here. But on these newer ones, they've decided it's a good idea to put a solenoid valve on the bottom of the float bowl on these carburetors. The way I think it should work is when you turn the key on, it'll send voltage that solenoid valve, and that solenoid valve will energize and it'll pull the plunger in on it and allow the fuel to come in. Most of the time there's a little rubber tip on it, and I think that little rubber tip closes that fuel flow. Whether it's lack of voltage getting to it or the solenoid itself is bad remains to be seen, but I got to verify that's it anyway before you even start. Filters look a little rough. Check, make sure we got fuel going through the fuel filter. You can see fuel inside the fuel filter. We got plenty of fuel flow, so we don't have to worry about that being the issue. There's no shutoff on these tanks either. If you don't have a cork, a pencil does a pretty good job. You can stick a pencil in there, kind of keep your gas from getting everywhere. But we know we're going through the filter, so that's a good thing. And 8mm up there on the top. That's the solenoid right there on the bottom of the float bowl. There's a little rubber on the end. That thing should de-energize, drop out the coil, and it should push upward, blocking fuel flow. And then when you turn the key on, it should get 12 volts on this, and it should complete the circuit to ground. It should energize, pull the solenoid in, drop the rubber grommet off, and let fuel flow. That's the way it should be. It's totally unrestricted. There's no blockage in the orifice or in the jet. And pick up on the float, and I can't blow through it, so that means that the main needle, the float in the main needle is doing its job. It's just not allowing it to get there because that solenoid is faulty or it does not have voltage to the solenoid. So I gotta get a meter, turn the key on, and see if we got power here to ground. First thing what you want to do whenever you're checking voltage on these things, or anything actually, is verify with the known power source that your meter is in fact working. This is 12 volt DC. I'm in the voltage DC auto ranging scale, and just go across my battery, and I can verify just that quickly that my voltmeter is functioning. There's nothing worse than to go through a whole problem and find out for whatever reason your voltmeter decided it wasn't going to work, and you wasted all that troubleshooting time with a meter that wasn't working. Now that you know your meter's working, you need to go about the process of making sure you get voltage where you need whenever you turn the key on. And to do that, there's got to be a person sitting in the seat. Okay, well, what happens on this particular one, and a great percentage of them, when you put pressure on the seat, there's a safety switch under the seat that actually doesn't make the circuit, that actually breaks the circuit. And so by raising the seat up to work on the battery, you close that circuit, or get off the lawnmower, you close that circuit, which kills the engine by shorting it out, of course. It shorts out, the voltage signal going to your spark and all that stuff, and then shuts it off. So to get around that while you're working on it like this, if you go to here, your thing underneath the seat, and you see that with the seat in the up position, it's closed. If you pull a wire off of it, that's the same thing as putting the seat down and putting a person in it or having weight on the seat to open that switch. So that's bypassing that just for this particular purpose. There's almost always on the foot pedal, like your brake pedal or something of that nature, there's going to be a safety switch also. And there could be a switch in the mower circuit to where you turn the mower on. It has to make sure that if you get off of the tractor with the mower deck running, that it's going to shut the engine off. So there might be an interconnection on the mower deck too. That's going to vary from model to model. I don't work on enough of them to tell you anything about that. Because I don't have a spare person here to push to depress this to bypass the safety switch there, I just put a bungee cord around the axle to hold it down. That's going to close that switch. So providing there's nothing in the mower deck circuit that's going to restrict it, I should be able to turn the key on. When I turn the key on, I should have voltage on that solenoid on the carburetor. I reinstalled the solenoid just to hold the bowl in place because I didn't want the needle to fall out. I didn't want to damage the plastic float. So I just screwed that back on to hold the float bowl on and pulled the wire off of it. Now, by inserting my probe in here and making good contact, you can see we've got 0 voltage. But that should change when I turn the key on. I'm going to reach over here and turn the key on. And I got the key turned on over there, and I've got 12.7 volts. Now that I know I've got 12.7 volts at the solenoid, and the solenoid's not doing its thing because gas is not getting to the engine, I've got to replace that solenoid. Well, so far so good. You can see that all it takes is just a basic thought process, to troubleshoot these simple little circuits like this. It gets a little crazy when you get into a whole bunch of safety circuits. Motorcycles get plumb crazy nowadays. Heck, you even got fuel injection systems that don't even have any connections with the throttle. It's all fly-by-wire. It sends a signal, down to the fuel injectors and everything. It's like, wow, I don't even want to work on that stuff. But at any rate, as long as you keep your head about yourself and think, your steps through, and don't make the mistake of having a bad voltmeter or one of the voltmeter probes fall off while you're in the middle of troubleshooting, you'll be all right. Okay, everything's all wrapped up. Cleaned everything up, the carburetor cleaner. Put everything back together. Well, of course, except for the top and the filter. I've got a filter on order. This one here is going to be replaced. Got an oil filter on order. Did not have that in stock. Even though these are somewhat universal, there's a broad array of KOHLER engines that this filter fits. Just didn't have one. So at any rate, we're going to see if this puppy's going to fire up. Again, I've got everything bypassed the way it needs to be just for this particular test. So let's see what happens. Before I put this old nasty cover on, I've got to clean all of this out of here too. So that's about it. So until I get a new oil filter, get a new air filter, she can go ahead and cut her grass the way it is. It's not a big deal. Well, I got the cover back on, cleaned out and everything, on top of the old filter. So now we just got to finagle this guy back in there. Make sure it's in the clips correctly, and it is. Plug in our wiring, but I'll do that as soon as I get done with this. Almost reminds you of GP Outdoors polishing up the hood on his tractor. Now what that little solenoid is, it is a fuel shutoff, but what it is, it's actually designed to be an anti-backfire device, but they are problematic. A lot of the mechanics will go ahead and disable those and cut off the stem so that whenever the solenoid fails, it can't block the fuel flow closed like this one did. and then just go back to business as though it's a normal lawnmower with nothing but a nut to just hold the float bowl in position. Now, I'm not telling you to do that. I don't do that, and I didn't do that here. They are pricey to get that replacement solenoid, but it really is the way to go to do it correctly. So at any rate, this thing's all put back together. I'm going to have my daughter pick up that or order that filter, and well, the air filter and the oil filter, and I'll run down to her house then and put that on. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and deliver this thing and let her go ahead and cut grass, because it's just about getting tall enough to choke a billy goat. This is Tractor Man 44. I'm out of here, guys.